As long as I can remember, the phrase, "be a good girl," echoed in every corner of my house, shaping every step, every smile. It was the mantra of my childhood, whispered with tenderness, but with the force of an unbreakable commandment. I was the girl who helped my mom without complaining, who took care of my younger siblings with almost maternal care, who smiled at every visitor, even the most annoying ones, and who apologized before even knowing if I had done anything wrong. Acceptance and love seemed conditioned on my unattainable perfection, on my ability to be the ideal daughter, sister, and granddaughter. I grew up believing, with every fiber of my being, that I would only be loved if I was impeccable, if I didn't cause problems, if I was, above all, the good girl of the family. But inside, inside I felt swallowed by a growing darkness. My anger, that natural and human emotion, was rigorously hidden, stifled in my chest until it turned into a painful knot. My sadness was ignored, masked by forced smiles and the constant performance of happiness. And my desires, those seeds of my individuality, were silenced before they could even sprout. I became a shadow of myself, a distant echo of the vibrant girl I could have been. And then, one day, I exploded. Not with shouts, not with the dramatic outburst many would expect from an explosion. My explosion was silent, internal, and infinitely more devastating. I was swallowed by a sadness so profound that I no longer knew how to smile, how to breathe without feeling an overwhelming weight on my chest. The world lost its colors, and each day was an exhausting battle just to get out of bed. I felt exhausted, depleted, in a way that sleep couldn't cure. My body and my mind finally said, enough. It was in this abyss of despair that the universe unexpectedly threw me a lifeline. Carl Jung. His words, read almost by chance in a forgotten book on the shelf, began to unravel the enigma of my own soul. It was Jung who helped me understand that this good girl I tried so hard to be was just a persona, a mask carefully constructed to please the outside world, especially my family. And that behind it existed a real woman, with flaws, desires, limits, and, yes, with anger and sadness. I was exhausted from being accepted at the expense of my own soul. Today, I'm talking to you who, like me, feel the weight of being who others want you to be. You weren't born to please, you were born to live whole. And that journey of truth and freedom begins when you also say, enough. It happened at Sunday dinner, a mundane scene, but one that unearthed an old, latent pain. My brother, always the troublemaker in the family narrative, vented about the pressure he felt to be successful, to honor the family name. He seemed like a burden, a constant complaint in conversations, and I, as always, was urged to fix it, to talk to him, to be a good example. The expectation to mend, to appease, to carry everyone's emotional weight pressed on me like a concrete slab. I looked at him, at my mother's tired face, at my father's judgmental gaze, and felt the familiar knot tighten in my stomach. That feeling of being the solution to all problems, the perfect mediator, the daughter who never causes trouble, was suffocating. I remember trying to breathe deeply, feeling the heavy air in my lungs, and an internal voice, long silenced, whispered, "Not again." That night, the old exhaustion returned, but this time it came with a sharp clarity. I realized that my role in the family was not a privilege, but a prison. I was, once again, neglecting my own needs, my own truth, to maintain the facade of family stability. What had been a muffled pain for years turned into acute anguish. I was at my limit, and the image of that good girl, always smiling and helpful, began to disintegrate. It was there that the seed of change was planted, amidst the discomfort of an unbearable family repetition. My journey to understand the good girl led me back to my childhood, to the ground where my deepest wounds were planted. I grew up in a home where superficial harmony was the currency for love. Any form of conflict, any expression of negative emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, was seen as a moral failing, something to be quickly hidden or, worse, punished by the withdrawal of affection. My mother, herself a woman with her own unprocessed pains, sought in me the perfection she perhaps never achieved in herself. My father, distant and demanding, saw obedience as the greatest virtue. I was the perfect daughter on the family stage. Good grades, impeccable behavior, always ready to help. But the truth is that this perfection was an armor, heavy and suffocating. The child in me, with her natural imperfections and authentic desires, was systematically repressed. I remember wanting to scream, to stamp my foot, to say no to a favor I didn't want to do. But the fear of disappointing, of being seen as the bad one, paralyzed me. Every time I swallowed a tear, every time I forced a smile when my heart was in pieces, I was unknowingly hurting my inner child. She would shrink back, frightened, and learn the lesson. To be loved, I needed to disappear. The family shadow in this scenario was the ideal of the perfect family, the immaculate image we needed to maintain for the world, where everyone was always happy, successful, and harmonious. For this image to be maintained, certain truths had to be denied, certain emotions suppressed. The authentic I, with its imperfections and singularities, was projected outward, disguised, or even abhorred. My function, unconsciously, was to be the pillar of this illusory perfection, internalizing the idea that my needs were less important than the stability of the family system. I existed to serve the image, not to be myself. The turning point came on a gray afternoon, when I was immersed in a book by Jung, searching for answers to the emptiness that consumed me. It was there that I encountered the concept of persona. The description hit me like lightning. That mask we wear to present ourselves to the world, the image we want others to see. In a flash, I realized the good girl I was for my family was not me. It was my persona, carefully constructed and rigidly maintained to please and be accepted. I wore this mask so well that, at times, I convinced myself it was my true face. But Jung didn't stop at the persona. He led me to the shadow, the repository of everything we deny in ourselves, the traits, desires, and emotions that we consider unacceptable, and that therefore we hide from ourselves and the world. Suddenly, my suppressed anger, my ignored sadness, my silenced desires made sense. They weren't flaws to be ashamed of. They were parts of my authentic self that I had pushed into the shadows, fearing they would shatter the image of the good girl. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was the sheer effort of keeping these essential parts of myself hidden. This initial understanding was both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying, because it meant confronting the parts of me I had worked so hard to hide. Liberating, because it offered a path out of the prison I had built for myself. I saw clearly that my family's perfect image was a collective persona, and that my own persona was a mirror of it. My denied emotions were the family's denied emotions, projected onto me, and I, in turn, projected them back by acting them out internally. This realization was a painful but necessary step towards healing, illuminating the path to integrating these hidden parts of myself, finally allowing the real me to emerge from the shadows. Armed with Jung's concepts, I began the arduous yet profoundly necessary inner work. It started with recognizing my own projections. I used to see my brother as the troubled one, always causing problems, always needing to be fixed. But Jung's teachings opened my eyes. Much of what I resented in him was a mirror of my own repressed desires for freedom, for rebellion, for simply not being the good girl. His struggles with family expectations were, in essence, my struggles, just expressed differently. The irritation I felt towards his perceived weaknesses was a reflection of my own fear of being weak, of not living up to the impossible standards I had set for myself. This perception was unsettling, but also incredibly liberating. It meant that my discomfort wasn't solely about him. It was an invitation to look inward. Confronting my shadow was the most challenging part. It wasn't about becoming bad, but about acknowledging and integrating the parts of me I had disowned. My anger, for instance, wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was a boundary, a signal that something was wrong, that my limits were being crossed. My sadness wasn't a weakness. It was a profound expression of my authentic pain, a call for self-compassion. I started by giving these emotions space. Instead of pushing them down, I allowed myself to feel them, to explore their origins. I journaled, wrote angry letters I never sent, and cried when I needed to cry. It was messy, uncomfortable, and often terrifying. It felt like I was dismantling the very foundation of who I thought I was. But through this painful process, a sense of wholeness began to emerge. Integrating my shadow wasn't about acting out these previously denied parts, but about acknowledging them, understanding their messages, and choosing how to respond consciously. My inner good girl began to learn that she didn't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. She just had to be real. And the bad parts of me weren't bad at all. They were simply raw, unexpressed aspects of my humanity yearning for recognition and integration. The true test of my inner work came when I began to translate these insights into my daily life, particularly with my family. This meant setting boundaries, a concept that once felt utterly alien and selfish to me. The first time I said no to a family request that would have drained me, my heart pounded. My mother's initial reaction was confusion, then a subtle disapproval. My father's silence was heavier than any words. The good girl in me screamed to backtrack, to apologize, to resume my old role. But I held firm. I learned to express my truth, not aggressively, but with calm assertion. Instead of absorbing everyone's emotional burdens, I started saying, "I hear you and I understand this is difficult, but I'm not able to take on this responsibility right now." It was met with resistance, sometimes with accusations of being selfish or changed. These reactions, though painful, were confirmations that I was indeed shifting, that I was no longer fitting neatly into their established narrative. The family system, built on my unconscious compliance, was now being challenged. There were moments of immense guilt, moments when I questioned if I was doing the right thing. The ingrained patterns of a lifetime don't disappear overnight. But each small step, each boundary held, each truth spoken, was a brick laid in the foundation of my authentic self. It was a gradual process of reclaiming my energy, my time, and my voice. The fear of not being loved slowly began to be replaced by the quiet strength of self-respect. My journey deepened into what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a whole, unique, and integrated individual. It wasn't about becoming perfect, but about becoming more of myself. This meant not just acknowledging my persona and shadow, but also integrating other archetypal energies. I started recognizing patterns in my dreams, noticing how certain universal symbols and stories resonated deeply within me. These weren't just personal experiences, they were echoes of the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human experience Jung spoke of. It was as if I was tapping into something ancient and vast, realizing that my individual struggles were also part of a larger human tapestry. I also began to understand the concept of the anima, the feminine principle within me. For so long, I had suppressed my intuition, my creativity, my nurturing aspects, especially those directed towards myself. The good girl was all about outward-facing care. Now I started embracing these softer, more receptive qualities, allowing myself moments of stillness, of creative expression, of simply being without needing to do. This balance between my more traditionally masculine, assertive side and my feminine, receptive side felt profoundly healing. The path of individuation is not linear, and it's certainly not easy. It's a continuous dance between conscious and unconscious, between the known and the unknown. There are still days when the old good girl whispers doubts, when family dynamics trigger old wounds. But now, I have the tools, the awareness, and the inner strength to navigate these moments with compassion and self-awareness. I'm learning to embrace my full spectrum of emotions, to respect my limits, and to trust my inner wisdom. Today, at 33, I stand on solid ground. Though the journey continues, I am no longer just the good girl. I am a woman who is still learning, still growing, but who has reclaimed her authenticity. The suffocating sadness has receded, replaced by a quiet sense of peace and a vibrant energy that comes from living in alignment with my true self. My relationships with my family are different. They are not perfect, but they are honest. Some dynamics have changed, Others are slowly evolving, and some may never fully understand my transformation. And that's okay. I've learned that their acceptance is no longer the price of my well-being. I've discovered that true love, real connection, comes from showing up as I am, with all my imperfections and my emerging wholeness. I no longer live to please, but to live whole. This freedom is intoxicating, profound, and deeply earned. It means I can express my opinions, set boundaries without crippling guilt, and pursue my own desires without feeling selfish. It means embracing the light and the shadow, knowing that both are essential parts of my being. If you are reading this, if your soul resonates with the burden of being the good one, I want you to know you were not born to please. You were born to live fully, authentically, with all your complexities and contradictions. Your journey to wholeness begins with a single, powerful act, saying, enough. Enough to the masks, enough to the expectations, enough to the self-abandonment. Step into your truth. It is a terrifying step, but it is the first step towards a life where you are truly free, truly yourself, and truly loved, not for the persona you wear, but for the magnificent, whole human being you are. My journey into Jungian psychology also brought me back into connection with my own body, a connection that had been severed by years of intellectualizing and emotional suppression. The good girl lived primarily in her head, analyzing, planning, and performing. My body was merely a vessel to carry out these functions, often ignored when it signaled fatigue, tension, or even joy. I realized that my chronic exhaustion and the deep sadness weren't just psychological states. They were also my body crying out for attention, holding the unprocessed emotions and the physical tension of a life lived out of sync with my true self. Through practices like mindful breathing, gentle movement, and simply listening to my body's signals, I began to reclaim this lost wisdom. I learned that my gut feelings, those subtle nudges or sensations, were often my intuition speaking, a voice that the good girl had long silenced, deeming it irrational or inconvenient. This embodiment became a powerful tool for integration, allowing the insights from my mind to sink into my very being. When I felt a knot in my stomach, I stopped to ask what emotion it was holding. When my shoulders tensed, I acknowledged the burden I might be carrying. This wasn't just abstract psychological work. It was a felt experience, grounding my healing in the physical reality of my existence. My body became an ally, a sensitive barometer of my internal state, guiding me towards choices that honored my truth. The profound transformation I experienced has ignited a deep desire to share my story, not as a perfected guru, but as a fellow traveler on this complex human journey. I realized that my personal narrative, once a source of shame and isolation, could become a beacon of hope for others wrestling with similar unseen burdens. This is why I'm here, sharing my journey with you. I believe that by courageously facing our own inner landscapes, by acknowledging our shadows and embracing our authentic selves, we not only heal ourselves, but also contribute to a larger collective healing. My hope is that my experience, particularly my engagement with Jung's wisdom, can serve as a permission slip for others to explore their own good girl or good boy personas, to question the family narratives that shaped them, and to dare to step into their own wholeness. It's an invitation to recognize that the exhaustion, the sadness, the feeling of being swallowed whole are not flaws, but powerful signals from your inner self urging you towards a life of greater authenticity and freedom. The price of being the good one might be high, but the reward of being truly yourself is immeasurable. It's a journey I deeply encourage you to embark on, for it is the path to truly living, fully and fearlessly.